everyone. My name is Katie Dykes. I'm the commissioner here at the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the Gina McCarthy Auditorium here, where we have the special occasion of the governor signing the bill number 7006, an act concerning emergency response by electric distribution companies, the regulation of other public utilities, and nexus provisions for certain disaster-related or emergency-related work performed in the state. This bill was passed on a wide bipartisan margin last week in the special session, and in a year, a historic year with so many challenges facing our state, it represents how our legislators have come together with the administration and also the support, I know, of Chairman Marissa Gillette, who's here with us today, to provide for this very historic and very impactful change to our general statutes that will really enhance the way that we hold utilities accountable and provide for better service for the ratepayers of our state. It was only 2 months, just over 2 months ago, that Connecticut was impacted by Tropical Storm Isaias, which threw many families and businesses out of power at a challenging time when we've all been struggling with the effects of a global pandemic. And the governor called for really wholesale changes in the way that the utilities are regulated, especially focusing on performance-based regulation, making sure that our utilities aren't just paid no matter how they perform, but that the utility regulator, PURA, that the commissioners there will be able to hold the utilities accountable and provide that their earnings are going to be tied now to performance, how they perform in terms of the things that all of us count on them doing, especially when it comes to providing for a more resilient energy grid, better communication and responsiveness, and faster restoration during storms. I'm really very pleased as part of our program today. We have several members of the leadership of the Energy and Technology Committee who put in many long hours over these last 2 months to construct a bill that is going to make some very sweeping changes. I know that they're all here today, and I'm going to be pleased to introduce them to say a few words about this accomplishment. And first, Senator Needleman, I think, will join us.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Governor, for being here today. This is a long list of thank yous that I'd like to do. First and foremost is my co-chair, Dave Arcanti, who really led the charge on so much of this and putting this bill together and turning it into a law, as well as my ranking members here, Senator Paul Formica and Representative Charlie Ferraro. This was a difficult task. The storm that we got hit with happened on my birthday. I was 69. I know I don't look it, but definitely am 69 and I feel it. But I think what we've done here is we've created a new regulatory framework by which PURA and our extraordinary new commissioner and chairperson, Marissa Gillette, can work to better hold the utilities accountable, not only during storm management, but in rate cases, which now she will have a longer time to do. I'm not sure everybody in this state understands just what a game changer it is to hire somebody who is a trained regulator. It's a testament to the governor and whoever recommended her, but this is really different for us. These positions were not typically filled that way. So we have an opportunity here to set a new course for the state of Connecticut, and I am proud to be part of that. I think we have a lot more work to do, and I think we're going to continue to do it, assuming that we all get reelected next session. The agenda is long. The governor's team and other people had other items that they wanted us to accomplish, but we really wanted to keep this bill narrowly focused. I'm particularly proud that we were able to pull a group of people together that don't necessarily agree on every issue, but we had a unanimous vote in the Senate, and that does not happen that often on a bill like this. So we came together, we were responsive to the will and the desires of the residents of the state of Connecticut, and we will do more. So thank you so much for inviting us today.
Next, we'd like to welcome up Representative Arcanti, who serves as also the co-chair of Energy and Technology.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to keep my remarks brief. I'm pretty remarked out after these last few months since the rate hike in July and the storm in August. But I really want to thank the governor for giving us this opportunity to put together this bill for special session. You know, special session works a little differently than a regular session does, and you know, the governor kind of makes the call on what we take up. So, you know, him giving us the opportunity to bring us all together and get this pretty big bipartisan package completed and passed, it was a lot of fun to work on. And I haven't talked to my colleagues, Commissioner, Chairwoman, my legislative colleagues in a week now since we did the bill. I went from talking literally every day, all hours of the day, to no communication. So I missed you guys. So it's good to see you. But there are some just low-key provisions in this bill that didn't get a ton of attention, but are really important to the ratepayers of Connecticut. One in particular is extending the timeline for rate-making proceedings. Right now, we're at 150 days plus a 30-day extension, which is one of the shorter timelines in the country. In this bill, we're now authorizing PURA 350 days for rate-making proceedings for electric and gas companies, which is vitally important for our ratepayers here in Connecticut. And like I said in the beginning, in my remarks on the House floor and what Senator Needleman alluded to, you know, I see this bill more as a beginning, not an end. I'm looking forward to getting back at it next session and working with everyone in this room on some of the things we didn't get a chance to get to, as long as Speaker Ritter sees it in his wisdom to reappoint me as House Chair of the Energy and Technology Committee. So thanks again, and thanks Governor, and thanks Commissioner.
Senator Formica, would you like to say a few words?
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner. Governor, thank you very much. I echo the comments of the good chair for giving us the opportunity, and I really want to commend the two chairs for opening this up to a bipartisan discussion. This really shows what can happen when two sides come together and work collaboratively to get something done for the benefit of the ratepayers here in the state of Connecticut. And I couldn't agree more that this is a conversation starter. A number of things have been said already as to why that is. You know, I also believe that there are larger fish to fry, and that the report that the good commissioner is going to be doing on wholesale markets and how we move forward, I think will be the next real big conversation that we have. And I look forward to working with everybody in my position as the co-chair of the Council of State Governments Energy Committee to try to broaden this into a New England conversation so that we can all work together to do what's best for the ratepayers. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Governor, thank you once again.
Now it's my pleasure to invite up Chairman Marissa Gillette to share a few words as well.
Good morning. My name is Chairman Marissa Gillette, and I want to thank the governor for, first of all, recruiting me to this great state. It's been a really wonderful opportunity for myself and for my family. It has been full of challenges over the past year between the pandemic and the storms, but I'm looking forward to rising to that challenge along with my fellow commissioners at PURA. I also want to thank the legislature and the administration for putting this legislation together. We look forward at PURA to effectuating the intent of it, which I think is loud and clear, and we look forward to working towards balancing those interests and bringing the legislation to full realization so that the ratepayers in the state are understanding that the regulator is empowered to do to hold their interests at the forefront of public utilities regulation in this state. So look forward to welcoming a diverse set of stakeholders into this process. We've seen an enormous increase in the interest of PURA's day-to-day proceedings, which I think is fantastic. We're welcoming into our proceedings municipalities and diverse stakeholders such as our low-income advocates and environmental justice advocates, and having more of those people around the table when we're going through these complicated matters is going to produce a much more balanced end result. So I'm looking forward to what it promises to be a lot of work ahead of us, and thank Commissioner Dykes, the governor, and the E&T leadership for placing their trust in myself and my colleagues to get the job done. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And now it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium Governor Lamont.
First of all, I just want to say to Norm and David and Paul and the legislature, I really appreciate you working together as one as quickly as you did. As Katie said, this was just 2 months ago that we were going through Hell Week. And that Hell Week was just not your power's off and you can't get out of your driveway, or your medicine is and your food is spoiling, you don't know what's going to happen the next day. And I think I realized more than ever that this is not just a utility, this is life-giving, and this is why we had to get it right. And Marissa, I know in certain terms you're the right person to step up to the challenge. The legislature's put forward good, strong, constructive legislation that gets the regulation right. And now you've got to put that into rules that make sense for not the near term, but for the long term. And I'll tell you, look, I'm not a big regulation guy usually. I come from not that world, but this is a natural monopoly, and nobody else holds these folks accountable on behalf of the consumers and on behalf of the ratepayers than good, strong regulation led by the legislature, listening to consumers, put in place by PURA, and what a difference that makes. And Norm, regulation, I guess, but what we're saying when it's performance-based is you do a good job, you get a good rate of return. You don't do a good job, you pay a penalty. Frankly, that's the way the rest of the world works, and that's the way utility is going to work as well. And so Marissa, here to take any questions we've got, but I think this was good regulation in the sense that it sets the direction, establishes the outcomes, gives PURA the opportunity to put this in place in a way that's going to make sense for the ratepayers for a long time and be an example for other states around the country. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Governor, and now I think it's time for the signing. I'll put the bill here, and we can all gather around the table and then take questions after.
actually going to have training on how to use a microphone.
Well, then, there's another question that came up during the debate. Whether or not this is going to have the effect of increasing rates. And while some people who voted for the bill raised doubt along that line, along with critics of the bill, I don't think either of you gentlemen were able to provide any assurance that that won't happen. You expressed confidence that it won't happen, but you can't assure it won't happen. Is that the case?
Well, I mean, I can't assure anybody about rates over the long term because one, that's not under our jurisdiction, and you know, I would make.
You're setting up a framework then.
We're setting up a framework. I don't believe this framework will result in a direct rate increase. No, I expect and I anticipate this framework to increase value to our ratepayers and our constituents for what they're already paying on their monthly utility bills and what they're currently getting from our two utilities in the state.
So I would like to respond to that also. First of all, we did put a lot of protections in the bill to make sure that I don't want to call it propaganda, but the materials that were sent out by the utilities saying that they were going to change everything they do to avoid any penalty at all were ludicrous as far as I was concerned. They were propaganda. What we are doing is we are creating a framework where we hope that they improve how they perform. And there's room in the bill for the commissioners at PURA to allow for exceptions. We don't want to mandate, if we have a Category 3 hurricane, nobody expects that there's going to be restoration in 96 hours. But we want them to do better than they've done. We want them to communicate better than they've done. Comments that Senator Fanfara made are probably the most telling because what we do want to invest in is more money in improving the infrastructure that we have. Clearly the grid needs work. This storm, which was not even a hurricane, caused so many outages, as many as we had in a Category 1 hurricane. So we think that investments will have to be made. How we get there, how that money is spent prudently, I can't tell you, but they need to come up with a plan to harden the grid. We may need some selective undergrounding. There's a bunch of work that the state needs to do, and some of that work could impact rates. Hopefully they won't, but the money that we spend up front is less time that we're going to have to take for outage restoration. We should not have had as many outages. We all know, we can look around, there's thousands and thousands of dead and dying trees throughout the state. That's a big testament to what we need to work on. We need more smart switching. We need smart meters so they know and can communicate with people accurately. None of that is being done right now. And that's going to take time, effort, and money to do that. We expect that that will be done as efficiently as possible so the ratepayers of the state of Connecticut end up with reliability at the best possible price. That's their job, and I don't think that that's happened so far.
There's a lot of data gathering that will now take place, both with the dockets at PURA and what you refer to as the study of wholesale markets, interaction with ISO and whatnot. So when you look at the next session, is this going to be a session in which new bills will be put forward, or will this be a session in which the legislature tries to better understand the dynamics of this market and what should eventually come forward?
My opinion is that it'll be both. We want to crunch the data, we want to get the data, we want to see what needs to be done. Not a lot of conversation has been had about the ISO provisions there, but the commissioner has been relatively outspoken about the fact that we do not feel we're getting a fair shake because we have very specific goals that we want the state to meet that are looking to impact the effects of climate change. So we are paying twice. We need to better align our interests and the interests of ISO. I have looking more deeply into the board structure of ISO and how that whole organization works. I do not think they're accountable to anybody, and that's not okay. So I think that what we're looking for is more accountability and to make sure that all the states in the region have a common alignment in climate change goals. Most of our states are coastal states. We know the ravages of climate change are going to dramatically impact our quality of life. So we need to do something about it, and we shouldn't be going it alone. We need to go it with them, and they need to go it with us. Right now, I don't like a structure where we can't appoint people to the board. The board appoints its own members. We're not even in the equation there, and it's just not all right.
Deep, first I'll say I'm very grateful to the leadership and the Energy and Technology Committee for the support and the interest that the legislature has reflected in these issues that are going on with the ICE New England, the wholesale markets that you see in this bill. DEEP will be issuing our integrated resources plan in draft in the coming weeks, which will provide a great amount of detail about how this disconnect between the ICE New England market structure and what Connecticut has had to take on in order to maintain clean and reliable power where the ICE New England market hasn't delivered that. We're going to be providing a lot of detail in that draft integrated resource plan about how that is impacting the affordability, the reliability, of our energy supply for Connecticut ratepayers, and challenging our ability to meet our clean energy goals. So we look forward to sharing that with the general public and stakeholders, and then providing that report that's called for in this bill before at the beginning of next year. I'll say, there is so much. This is such a dynamic time for our energy markets because of these types of disconnects. I know that it's keeping us very busy at DEEP, both in preparing the integrated resources plan, but also spending a lot of time engaging with the other states in the New England region because, again, we share a regional electric grid. And so in addition to working for the best policies in partnership with the legislators here in Hartford, if we want to really get the wholesale market to be more reflective of what we need for our state, then we have to work very hard in advocacy at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and at the ICE New England and through its stakeholder process, and most importantly, building support and coordination with the other New England states who I believe share some of these the impacts and some of the concerns. And so,
what leverage does the state have with ISO?
What leverage do we have? Well, certainly when we can partner with the other states and work together to have a unified set of priorities around reforming the wholesale energy markets, ensuring that our transmission planning process is providing for cost-effective solutions, and ensuring that the governance of the ISO makes that body more responsive to the needs of our consumers in our states. Working together with other states is our best chance to be able to have that leverage and have that impact.
And can I get knocked out of ISO New England into a different ISO?
So, I think what we're calling for is a change to the wholesale market design for the New England market that we're participating in. Certainly, we can always consider whether there's, if we're not successful in being able to get that market design changed here in the region, we'd have to look at what our options are. But the most efficient, the most effective way for us to get what we need is to work within New England with our neighboring states who share the same clean energy policies in many cases that we have here in Connecticut to pursue that reform of the market that we're participating in.
I wonder if the governor and Senator Khalid could comment on the issue of whether or not this could lead to increases in electric rates.
I'll go for it.
Thank you.
I'd say two things on the electric rates. You said, will rates go up for users? I turned that right on its head. I think you're going to see maybe shareholders are going to pay a price. I think you're going to find senior executives could pay a price. I do not put all this on the backs of the shareholders, especially if I think Marissa determines the utilities did not do all appropriate necessary to limit the damage and get everybody on as soon as they possibly could. And I think that's just the type of thing this regulation will take into account. ISO, I'd been in office for weeks when we found out that, where's Paul, right? We found out that Millstone may be pulling the plug. And I go to ISO and I say, all right, well, you've been doing this for some time. What are our alternatives? What leverage do we have? And they said, oh, well, it looks like you got a problem. And all of a sudden I realized maybe this is not the most effective organization we have as we try and navigate through how we reduce our carbon reliance and how we do more with renewables and how we have a reliable energy supply. If I find we can do that working in conjunction with our fellow governors, I'm happy to look at that.
Thank you very much. I've had the pleasure of serving on this committee for about 6 years under some great chairmen, as you can see now. But you know, one of the good ones was Lonnie Reed, who talked about time for utility 2.0, and we never quite really got there when Lonnie Reed was there. But her legacy, I think, is this bill, and this is the kind of beginning of a new conversation of utilities and how they operate. One, based on performance, but two, based on, you know, there are some teeth in this, both in the bill, and penalties, and for PURA. And so will it raise rates? I don't think anybody knows, but I think if it stops the train going forward the way it has been and redirects it to a more positive opportunity, then ratepayers will benefit in the long term.
Can I ask you, my question is on performance, and I know that's come up several times in this debate and in this legislation, that it should be, the reward should be based on that and not a guaranteed profit. How does this legislation really address that? How can you just say, well, you're not going to get this 9.25%, you're going to get something else?
You want to do that?
Maybe Marissa would like to take that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for that question. So the first couple sections of this bill direct PURA to undertake a proceeding that will look at setting performance-based metrics. It includes, I think, 10 areas in which that PURA is directed to set metrics for and consider. So right now we regulate based on cost of service, and that's a traditional rate-making practice across the country. So transitioning into a performance-based structure where the utility is either rewarded or penalized for not achieving those metrics, which are set transparently in a proceeding with multiple stakeholders, is the direction that we've been asked to go.
And I have a question for Senator Gillette. And that is, in the midst of these discussions with this legislation, Eversource came up with a proposal to ask the state to back them up $700 million loan. And I believe you said at the time that if at any other time, it may be palatable. Where do you see that going?
Well, my colleagues on the committee were a little bit more animated about that proposal than I was. I thought it was inappropriate and not timely. If there is an issue about the unrecoverable shut-off money or the storm management costs and how they would amortize those costs over time, that belongs at PURA, not with us. It wasn't only that they asked for that. The legislation, David read it very closely, and basically they were asking us to disempower PURA. Should have been the other way around. If those decisions need to be made to soften the impact on ratepayers for all the shutoffs that are not going to be recoverable, especially because that could be hundreds of millions of dollars beyond what they put in their normal budget, that has to go through PURA. It has to go through the Attorney General. It has to go through our Treasurer because it involves our credit rating. What was really inappropriate about that, not that it wasn't creative, I like sometimes that kind of creative thinking, but what it was saying to us, let's legislate a mandate that the state was going to guarantee their bonds. That was the awful part of it. It wasn't something we could, should, or would do. So where that goes, what the losses are, how they need to be amortized, that starts with PURA and then maybe goes other places. Connecticut has spent years improving its credit rating, and I would probably imagined that Governor Lamont would have some serious thoughts about backing up a private company that makes $1 billion a year in profit, backing up their loans, which are demerit against our credit rating. So I thought that the timing was kind of odd, creative accounting, but not necessarily something we should have been even talking about.
Governor, I want to ask a pandemic question real quick with the third phase of reopening tomorrow. Still feel good about the next phase of reopening? I'm also wondering kind of what comes next. Is there more reopening to come, or are we going to sort of stop for a while?
Well, there's not much more reopening to reopen. I mean, we're about 99%. But we're going to go forward on October 8th, being very cautious about that. I was very happy to see that our positivity rate yesterday was at 0.7%, not at 1.5. They misestimated the number of tests. That said, I know it's been trending up a little bit, and we're going to watch it very carefully and make sure that we regulate and penalize those that aren't following the protocols carefully. I mean, just the anecdotes about restaurants that are sort of acting like bars, and those are the places where you have some of the flare-ups that we want to be very careful about. But for the vast majority of restaurants, vast majority of event venues, they're doing it right. We're going to allow them to do it right and hope it works.
Remember, right, this was initially supposed to be a 4-phase reopening. If that kind of changed, or might there be a phase 4 one day?
I guess phase 4 would be everything at 100% and bars. So let's wait on that.
And then you mentioned the change in the positivity rate yesterday. I'm just wondering if you know why that error happened. Pretty significantly changed.
I don't. I'll tell you about that this afternoon when we do the briefing. Obviously, we get test results from a whole wide variety of different places in public health, and we calculate that. And I think they come sometimes in lumps or in batches, and we didn't get everything calculated as we should have.
You're doing the briefing today, not Thursday?
Tomorrow, I meant. Yeah, thank you. Your afternoon is free.
I wish. What do you think of the tone that Governor Cuomo has set? He said he has to set to get a little bit tougher with all kinds of institutions, including religious institutions. He is threatening very strong action if they do not abide by the limits on public gatherings.
I'm a little more of a carrot guy. He's maybe a little more of a stick guy. As I've said before, if you want to stay open, you've got to follow the protocols. And you've got to make sure that everybody within your town or in your region are taking it seriously, just like I referenced in terms of a couple of those restaurants. So you've got to watch carefully. And it would be the same for the houses of worship. I want the houses of worship to be open. And as long as they're doing it safely and maintaining the distance, they'll be able to stay open and stay open safely.
Can I ask a question about the bill? At one point, there was going to be reimbursement for food and medicine going back to July with the storms we just had. Why was that taken out?
So we ran into legal issues there, holding them to a legal standard that didn't exist before the storm, making it retroactive to July 1st, holding them to that standard before the storm even occurred. And so, yeah, it's prospective. Yep.
What is the latest on the rate hike update that was, it's been about a month since the last public hearing on that. Where are you at?
Thank you for that question. So the question, I believe, is about the July 1st rate adjustment that PURA suspended after receiving a request from the legislature to suspend it and investigate. We've completed our hearings into both the Eversource and UI request. UI was in a little bit of a different place because PURA suspended that before it went into effect in that territory. And we've had our hearings and public hearings and all those matters, and right now PURA staff is working on the decision, which we hope to issue no later than the end of the year, but sooner if possible. And I just want to remind folks that in the meantime, those rate adjustments are suspended indefinitely until PURA takes further action.